we are going to share the story of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. First, we need to prepare our listening skills by chanting. Rub, rub, rub your ears, rub them round and round. Put your finger on your mouth. Because this is story time. The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Illustrated by Frederick Varney. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Potter, "you may go into the field or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now, run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out." Then Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's shop. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Hard crust buns, hard crust buns, once a penny, twice a penny, hard crust buns. Once a penny, twice a penny, hard crust buns. 2 por 10, bizcochitos calentitos, hard crust buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather some blackberries. Yum, 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 yum. But Peter, who was very naughty, went away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First, he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. "Food is good, it makes me grow. Food is good, and this I know." Well, feeling rather sick because he had ate too much, he went to look for some parsley. Yum, yum, yummy, yum. But round the end of the cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees, planting out young cabbages, but he jumped and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief, stop!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. "Run, Peter!" He had lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, 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 so that I think he might have got away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into the gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons of his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. And he got stuck. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears. But his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. Mr. McGregor came up with a teeth, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been beautifully to hide in if it had not had so much water on it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath the flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking inside each of them. Presently, Peter sneezed. "Curse you!" And Mr. McGregor in no time was after him. "Run, Peter, run!" and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and, well, he was tired to run after Peter, and he went back to his work. Peter sat down into rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in the can. Shake, 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 shake the mud, shake the mud. After a time, he began to wander about, hopping and sobbing. Lippity, lippity, not very fast, looking around. He found a door in the wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse, squeak, squeak, squeaky, was running around out over the stone doorsteps, and he was carrying peas and bees to her family in the wood. Peter asked her to get to the gate, but she had such a large pile of things in her mouth that she could not answer like this. She only shook her head at him, and Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently, he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat, meow, was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it was best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard lots about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. But that's another story. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe scratch, scratch, filly bum bum bum, filly bum bum bum, filly bum bum bum. Peter scattered underneath the bushes. He presently saw, as nothing happened, that he decided to climb upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Can you see it? There's a gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could along a straight walk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take the sunken wings and learn to fly all your life. You were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbird fly. Blackbird fly into the rise of the dark black night. Peter never stopped running or looked behind until he got home under the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand of the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what had he done with his clothes again. It was the second little jacket he had lost. Enough for a night. I am sorry to say Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter, 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. Bread and milk, yummy in my tummy. Bread and milk, bread and milk. That's the end of the story. Thank you for listening. Now I would like to share with you a little rhyme about rabbits. So please gather your hands like this. Bloop, and make your rabbit a sail sign. I saw a little rabbit go hop, hop, hop. I saw his long ears go flop, flop, flop. I saw his little nose go twink, twink, twink. I saw his fluffy tail go swish, swish, swish. I told him, little rabbit, won't you stay? But he stared at me and he hopped away. Goodbye, little rabbits. Happy Easter.